12 people were injured on a Qatar Airways flight during a bout of turbulence on Sunday. Flight QR017 from Doha managed to land safely and on schedule at Ireland's Dublin Airport. According to the airport, the Boeing 787 Dreamliner hit turbulence while flying over Turkey.
Qatar Airways Flight 103 prepared for takeoff. Inside the cockpit, two experienced pilots ran through their final checks, unaware that their journey would end in disaster. On a nearby runway, a Boeing 747 roared to life, unknowingly set on a collision course with the Airbus A380. Within moments, two massive jets would meet in a fiery mid-air collision, sending debris raining down on the airport below. How did a routine flight turn into one of the deadliest aviation disasters in history? On board Qatar Airways, Flight 103, two highly experienced pilots were in control. Captain Ahmed Al-Sayed, a veteran pilot with over 20 years of flying experience, was responsible for ensuring a smooth and safe journey. He had spent decades mastering the skies, handling thousands of flights, and navigating through all kinds of weather conditions. Flying had become second nature to him, a career built on discipline, precision, and an unwavering commitment to safety. Sitting beside him was First Officer Leah Al Khalifa, a highly skilled pilot known for her sharp attention to detail. She was no newcomer to high-pressure situations and had built a reputation for her precision in flight operations. Every button, every gauge, every system on the Airbus A380 was second nature to her. Together, she and Captain Al-Sayed formed a strong team, sharing responsibilities and ensuring that every protocol was followed to the letter. Before takeoff, they worked through the standard pre-flight checks. This was the routine that pilots around the world followed before every flight, inspecting flight instruments, testing communication systems, verifying fuel levels, and confirming that all systems were in perfect working order. They checked the weather, reviewed the flight path, and coordinated with air traffic control to ensure everything was set. There was no room for error.
100, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
The engines roared as the Airbus A380 picked up speed along the runway. Inside the cockpit, Captain Ahmed Al-Sayed and First Officer Leah Al Khalifa focused on their instruments, monitoring the aircraft's acceleration. Outside, the afternoon sun reflected off the sleek body of the plane as it raced down the tarmac. A few seconds later, the nose lifted off the ground and the massive aircraft gracefully ascended into the sky. From inside the cabin, passengers could feel the familiar pull of gravity as the plane climbed higher, leaving Hamad International Airport behind. For the travellers on board, it was just another flight. Some leaned back, closing their eyes for a much-needed nap, while others flipped through in-flight entertainment options, selecting movies or music to pass the time. A few passengers gazed out of the windows, watching as the city of Doha shrank beneath them, the golden desert stretching far into the horizon. The clear blue sky ahead promised a smooth journey to London Heathrow. The cabin crew moved efficiently through the aisles, checking seatbelts, assisting passengers, and preparing for the meal service. They smiled warmly as they reassured nervous flyers and made sure everyone was comfortable. The gentle hum of the aircraft filled the cabin, blending with the occasional chime of seatbelt signs and soft murmurs of conversation. While the Airbus A380 climbed steadily into the sky, another aircraft, a massive Boeing 747, was preparing for takeoff on a different runway. The pilot, Captain James Robertson was an experienced aviator just like Captain Al Said. He and his crew had gone through the same routine checks, making sure their aircraft was ready for the long journey ahead. The engines of the 747 thundered as they lined up on the runway, waiting for clearance from air traffic control. In the control tower, air traffic controllers were managing multiple flights at once. Doha's Hamad International Airport was one of the busiest in the world, with aircraft constantly landing and taking off. Every second mattered, and the controllers had to ensure that dozens of flights were timed perfectly. But amidst the rush, a critical mistake happened. The Boeing 747 was cleared for takeoff, but the controllers failed to account for the Airbus A380 still ascending on a nearby flight path. The two aircraft, both enormous and both carrying hundreds of passengers, were unknowingly on a collision course.
Rotate.
Captain Robertson pushed the throttle forward, and the Boeing 747 began its rapid acceleration down the runway. Inside the aircraft, passengers felt the familiar force of takeoff pressing them back into their seats. The wheels lifted off the ground, and the aircraft climbed higher, gaining speed. Meanwhile, the A350 continued its ascent, its pilots unaware of the danger looming just ahead. High above the airport, Flight 103 was still climbing, smoothly ascending toward its cruising altitude. The passengers inside remained unaware of the silent danger closing in on them. Some were adjusting their seats for the long journey ahead, while others were lost in conversations, movies, or books. The hum of the engines, the occasional chime of a seatbelt sign, and the clatter of the cabin crew preparing for service painted the picture of just another routine flight. But in the cockpit, Captain Ahmed Al Sayed and First Officer Leah Al Khalifa had no idea that another massive aircraft was rising into their path at incredible speed. At the same time, the Boeing 747, packed with passengers, had just lifted off from the intersecting runway. Captain James Robertson and his crew were focused on their climb, adjusting speed and altitude as per their flight plan. The aircraft, heavier and slower to maneuver than the sleek A350, was still in the vulnerable early moments of takeoff. Yet, the pilots had no reason to suspect they weren't alone in the sky. The collision happened in an instant. The Boeing 747, climbing at an angle, struck the Airbus A350 mid-air, its wings slicing through the fuselage like a blade. The sound of metal tearing apart was deafening, and a massive explosion erupted in the sky as fuel ignited on impact. Passengers in both planes barely had a moment to process what was happening before the sheer force of the collision sent shockwaves through the cabins.
Settled down now that it was quite scary. The plane just seemed to go stop, which it didn't, but then dropped. Quite a severe drop.
Inside the cockpits, both sets of pilots had only seconds to react. Captain Al Said and Captain Robertson instinctively pulled at their controls, trying to change direction, trying to save their aircraft, but it was too late. The impact had already shattered the structural integrity of both planes. The A350, its body torn apart, split into sections and began plummeting toward the ground, pieces of wreckage scattering across the sky. The Boeing 747, with a massive hole in its fuselage, spiraled out of control, its engines roaring as the pilots struggled in vain to regain control. The sky above Hamad International Airport was filled with fire and debris as both aircraft, torn apart from the mid-air collision, fell uncontrollably toward the ground. The Airbus A350, already in pieces, scattered its wreckage across the airport's runways and surrounding areas. The impact sent shockwaves through the ground, shattering windows in nearby buildings and sending thick plumes of smoke billowing into the air.
And then fortunately the captain got it under control quite quickly, because I was thinking, oh, it's going to keep falling. But unfortunately there was a couple of passengers that didn't have seatbelts on, so they were thrown in front of us. They were thrown out of their seats and hit their head.
The Boeing 747, though still somewhat intact, was in a violent spiral. Its engines, damaged from the collision, could no longer keep it stable. As the pilots fought desperately to regain control, the aircraft's right wing broke off mid-fall, sending it into an even faster descent. The tail section, weakened by the impact, ripped away, leaving passengers inside helpless as the aircraft twisted and tumbled toward the ground. Within seconds, the massive plane slammed into the airport's main runway, erupting into an enormous fireball. The explosion sent chunks of burning metal flying in all directions, igniting fuel that had leaked from both aircraft. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.